It makes my work very easy. The fear part. We're afraid to do justice work because our lives are on the line. That's the reason. How is it going to impact our finances? How is it going to impact our relationships? How is it going to impact our life? How is it going to impact our health? And the enemy says, ha ha, fooled you. Because disengagement with justice impacts your life, it impacts your health, it impacts your finances. So we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. If we do nothing, we will die. So if your choice is between living and dying, is that a real choice? That's not a choice unless you want to die. It's not a choice. So I was afraid. The network of support that I have here that leads to the process of authorized ministry in the United Church of Christ was set up so that I could do what God is calling me to do. Yeah. And I am 2 years behind in my official work because I've always felt since I was 4 years old that ministry would cost me my life. That if I was the preacher that God called me to be, that I would be killed. Since I was 4 years old, I remember 4 years old, I've been afraid that ministry would cost me my life since I was 4. I read Ebony's Pictorial History of Black America when I was 12 years old, all 3 volumes. In 2025, I am seeing the same thing that I read about. Such that I had to have a conversation with my therapist to find out if I was tripping, if I could use the vernacular. And what she said was, although it is not probable that it will cost me my life, she could not, as a therapist, and a Christian therapist at that, dismiss it out of hand because the world that we live in, I was in college when when Mother Emanuel got shot up. I was an adult with children when that happened. This is not my mother's story or my grandmother's story. I was a working adult father of 3, seminary educated, when someone tried to go onto a HBCU campus in Florida, couldn't get on campus, and then decided to kill people at a Dollar Tree. That was in my adult lifetime. And so the things that I was afraid would happen are happening. I am an ally of our brothers, sisters, and siblings in the LGBTQIA plus community. And there's a woman who had a pride flag on the bottom of her window in her shop on the West Coast, and she was shot in her stomach and killed, not for any overt action of allyship, but because someone did not like the flag in the corner of her window. And that happened on the same weekend that the shooting in Florida happened that was designed to kill Black college students. And I had to preach that Sunday morning. And a white man that I'd never seen came into our church. We in the hood. We don't get a lot of white strangers. We get white invitees. We don't get white strangers that come to our church. And I was terrified. And he was sitting there and he said nothing and he was not engaged in worship at all. And if you've ever been to Union and you know Pastor H.A. Morrison, it is a lively affair. So for someone to sit there stone-faced, I was terrified. And it was not until I told the Lord, if I die for saying what I need to say, then I will die. When I said that, the man got up and walked out. But I was terrified up until that point. So we cannot allow fear to stop us from moving in this justice work. Now, here's the thing. This isn't part of my presentation. There are many different areas of justice, which is why I love that Dr. Danish said that we cannot fight every fight. Now, what Dr. Danish gave us, if y'all remember from the beginning, was from an association and a conference perspective. So the association and conference perspective is limited in resources, limited in manpower, limited in time. That's a different perspective than our dear brother had here, which is the individual perspective. But even in the individual perspective, we're still limited in time and resources. And so, yes, I can in my heart believe that all people are equal, but wife and 3 kids, daughter in college, special needs child, my own tutoring business, ministry, Bible study, preaching, teaching. I don't have time to stand up and vocalize, stand up. And so I do have to prioritize those things that I feel that God is calling me to. Now, if we're not in conversation with God about what God's will is, if we're not in conversation with God, consistent conversation with God, and if we don't have the courage to say, God is leading me in a different direction, right? Okay, so one of the benefits that I have is I have a lot of people who are older than in my life who speak wisdom. And so I'm in my 40s now. So my mentors are all in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, you're old enough to say that worked then, but it won't work now. Or it worked this way then, but it won't work this way now. Okay, so if you're having a conversation with your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren or your godchildren or your nieces and nephews about how they're supposed to behave in school, that's going to look very differently than how we behaved when we were in school, right? Because some of us are old enough to either remember or know people who remember that school was a privilege. So the mentality that you bring to the table when it comes to education is very different than somebody who believes that education is a right. Okay, so is it a privilege to serve God, or is it a right or responsibility to serve God? That informs how we move. So what are the areas of justice that we can involve ourselves in? Well, of course, there's racial justice. That's pretty big for Black people and our allies, because injustice that affects the Black community is killing us. We're always 2 to 3 times worse off than our white counterparts. And here's what's crazy about whiteness. This myth of whiteness is not real. Italians, some Jewish, Polish, some Spanish, some Roman, some French, some British. That's all categorized in these United States as white. So no matter what their ethnicity, what their region of the world that they came from, no matter what socioeconomic conditions that they came from, it is still worse off in this country across the board to be Black. So my first and foremost priority for justice for Michael will always be justice that impacts us. But justice-wise, we are also the bellwether for the United States. So you can look at the condition. Research shows that in order to understand the condition of a people in a so-called civilized or industrial society, it's based on how they treat their young and how they treat their old, right? Then how they treat their prisoners. And if you look, how they treat the Blacks. So if we're doing well, if we're economically healthy, if we're being treated fairly, it trickles up to everyone else, just like the garbage and the manure and the sewage trickles down. All right? So if you want a healthy United States, you need a healthy Black people. If you don't care about the health of the United States, especially financially, then you see what's going on here. And this is why when we have situations like what started off with our Muslim brothers and sisters with the travel ban in the first administration, and then what's happening with immigrants in the second, a lot of Black people were silent because they thought we had a pass. Just like they thought we had a pass when September 11th happened and we had all our focus on our Arab and Muslim brothers and sisters. But we can now see in the streets of Chicago that it does not take long for this country to remember how much they hate us. When a 16-year-old Black boy getting ready to go to school can be slammed down on the concrete, but the only news that you get about what's going on is on TikTok and Facebook, right? Because they know if they show it, the press credentials are going to be pulled, or multi-million, billion-dollar mergers will be at risk. And what sustains a free people is a free press, not this myth of the Second Amendment being there to protect the rights of the First Amendment. That's a lie. The truest expression of freedom is the free press so that we can challenge power. So we have racial justice. We have social economic justice. So you write these down. These we got paper. We have racial justice. We have socio-economic justice. We have climate justice. We have gender justice. Because half of the population in the world is women. And in our country, Black women fare worse than everybody else even though they are the highest educated population in the country. And the government knows that, which is why they're purging black women from federal roles. So we cannot just focus on, there has to be an intersectionality, right? So,
I have to say this because you just mentioned what I just did.
okay.
I'm an attorney. I was an assistant state attorney for Miami, Florida for a couple of years, but I've been in Rhode Island working for the VA in Providence. And I quit my job, walked away. They did not fire me. They begged me to stay. And one reason I quit my job is so I can be here for these kinds of conversations, because as long as President Trump was my boss in the executive branch, all I could do was sign petitions online to support causes, because I knew they would come after me if I marched. But now I'm free. I lived off my severance. I came here, moved back down home, right here in Carrollton, Virginia. I go to Western Grove, by the way, Newport News. Those of you that know me, Dr. Weir, I'm so glad to see you. But I had to say that because you mentioned the federal government. I just did not want to be tethered to that. I want to be able to speak my voice and put my life in.
Right.
That's all I want to say.
Oh, thank you. So I appreciate that. And that takes courage, because and it also, for those who continue the fight, it takes another courage to do that work from the inside. So we also, we don't want to minimize those who left to fight, not left the fight, left to fight. And then we have to acknowledge those who stay behind enemy lines to do that fight, because there's a place for everybody. So we had our environmental justice or our climate justice. We have our economic or socioeconomic justice. We have our racial justice. We have our gender justice. One of the ones that I looked up, give me 1 second, because I'll get to I'll save time for question and answer. Corrective justice is something that we want to make sure that we're aware of. And this deals with correcting an imbalance caused by a wrong, often focusing on the specific relationship between two parties where one has been wronged by another. So corrective justice is very close to restorative justice. And as believers, we have to have a focus on restorative justice. So we can't burn it all down. Because if we burn it all down, we'll be homeless too. We can't burn the bridges. We can't burn the house. But we do have to do some extermination. We do have to do some examination. And then we have to do some form of reconciliation. Not necessarily saying integration. So if Annie Lou Hamer said in one of her speeches, if she wanted to, everybody knows the sick and tired of being sick and tired, but something that she said that rung out to me, and I love this perspective, because now that we're so politically correct, we're afraid to say the true parts out loud. And she said that equality with a white man, I'm paraphrasing, equality with a white man was a step down for her. Because how they were living in her day was not a true image semblance of justice. And so if equality with this system is the goal, then I'm going to continue to suffer, because I'm going to lower myself to the type of values that allow people to be raped, that allow women to be raped, for my son to look like your son because they share the same slave master father, and for that son to be sent up north, and for the rest of the children to be beaten in the fields. That is not an equality that we want to have. That is not the burning house that we want to integrate ourselves into, as Dr. King said as he was headed toward the grave. So we have to be mindful of those things. Now, there are some questions that we need to answer. And you all are going to write these questions down. And then you have a chance to answer them. All right. I'm going to give you time to write them first. The writing of the questions is more important than the answering of the questions. Please hear me when I say, and it's not based on time, it's because you have to think and you have work to do. All right? So if you don't get to answer a question, I know we're supposed to have Q&A, but I can't answer for you, and this is based on the local context. So I can't answer these questions for you. These are questions that you must answer, that you must take to those in power at your church, because there is a power balance and imbalance in every church. And then you will let us know what you will do to make this justice a reality. So here it is. The first question is, in the local context, as we focus on, First question. Question number one is, what does justice look like? Just write the question down. What does justice look like? And I'll know that you're done writing when you make eye contact with me. I don't want to rush you. Question number one, what does justice look like? Question number two, who decides what justice is? Who decides what justice is? Remember, this is the local context. We're not talking about God. We're not talking about the president. We're talking about in your congregation. What does justice look like? Who decides what justice is? Who decides who gets justice? Who decides who gets justice? Now, this allows you to go outside of your local context. Is it the police? Is it the lawyer? Is it the mayor? Is it who decides who gets justice? What happens when people are denied justice? This is in your local context and in your community. What happens when people are denied justice? This one's a little longer, so I'm going to repeat it 3 times. You ready? What are the forms of justice? What are the forms of justice? And I named 5 of them, that just for your consideration. What are the forms of justice that are important to you? One more time. What are the forms of justice that are important to you? One more time. What are the forms of justice that are important to you? Next question. And got to be honest, I do not want to hear the answer because your pastor might be in the room. Does that reflect your church's teaching? Does that reflect your church's teaching? Now, it's not a right or wrong, because what you believe is important may not be the priority for the congregation, and it may not be the strength of leadership in your church. So this is not an indictment. This is just your honest assessment. Does that reflect your church's teaching? Now, does it reflect your church's actions? Does it reflect your church's actions? One more time. Does it reflect your church's actions? Another reflection question, a little longer. I'll read it 3 times. Does it reflect the stated mission? Does it reflect the stated mission? Does it reflect the stated mission and vision of your church? Does it reflect the stated mission and vision of your church? Question: who really sets the vision? Who really sets the vision? I'm Baptist born and bred. I am now a member of the UCC. Both Baptists and UCC are Congregationalists. But in the Black Baptist Church, the pastor sets the vision. In UCC, in this Congregationalist model, sometimes the people set the vision, entrust it to the pastor, and blame the pastor when it doesn't work out because the people don't do no work. Now, I'm not talking about anybody in the room. As my pastor says, I'm just talking about who I'm talking about, right? And so we have to be honest from where we stand, who really sets the vision. All right, now, what I want to ask for you, the question and the answer is going to be me questioning, you answer. We're going to flip it. I'm going to ask the question, you're going to answer. You're going to 30 seconds to answer the question. Whoever wants to answer. In your own words, based on the content of this conversation with myself and Dr. Danich, what is prophetic proclamation? Only answer that question. I really love to hear what you think, but I really want to hear what you think about that question because we can get sidetracked. What is prophetic? I'm going to tell you what I think it is, but I want to know what you think prophetic proclamation is. And your answer needs to include an example of who does it or how it's done? And then the second question is, what is a prophetic pace? And have you seen it? I'll ask those again. What is, I be stealing from you. I listen to you. This is Dr. Danage at the board of directors meeting. I pick my brother's brain. My topic comes from my pastor's sermon. So if I hear it from you, it belongs to me. But I'm gonna give credit where credit. That's why he laughing. He knows. Have you seen it? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? Yes. Sorry, I get excited. Sorry. I'm gonna give it all. Okay. So it is, what is prophetic proclamation? And I want you to give an example of who does it or what it looks like. And then what is a prophetic pace? And have you seen it? All right. Prophetic pace, like pacing, yeah. So this is how I say thank you. That's my thank you. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. So as you're thinking, I'm gonna give you one thinking, then we'll be out of here in a minute. As you're thinking, I like sources of sources. So one of the things that stood out for me was when Dr. King said that justice too long delayed is justice denied. So me and Google, we're pretty good friends. And I found out that it was the first time that it was really, really noticeable was when former British Prime Minister William Gladstone famously said, justice delayed is justice denied. And then I remember Dr. King saying that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And so that informs what I think of when I think of prophetic pace. And then, of course, I steal from Minister Wiggins because she helped me to create my first topic. So the title of my topic and my summary. And so I have something to offer, but I want to know what you think. So anybody can answer. I would like for two or three volunteers to answer. There's no wrong answer. I just want to know what you think. And then I'll ask my final question and then we'll be out of the way. I'll be out of your way. And thank you all for your time. Thank you for the dialogue. I appreciate it. This is my first time. I've presented a need for the community at our conference last year, but I've never had an opportunity to present what my passion is. And so I thank you all, and now you're a part of my story. So when I call my mom in the hospital, I'm like, Mama, this is what I did today. She'll be happy for me. Okay. Anybody? Yes? Anybody? If not, I can tell you mine, but I'd rather hear yours.
I wanted to share, but I actually wanted to share what I believe is, but I can sum it up in better words if I were to read this quote, and it comes from Pastor Renita Weems. And so she spoke about this, and I thought it was so fitting, and it brought it back to my remembrance when you asked that question, because so often we think that there's a particular person. She said, when we're talking about prophecy and being prophetic and proclaiming what God has called us, she said it's an FBI agent refusing an order that betrays his oath. It's a judge who won't rubber stamp an unjust law. A nurse who tells the doctor, you will not speak to my patient that way. It's a writer who risks saying what polite society doesn't want to hear. It's a principal who refuses to let ICE agents step onto her school grounds, or a voter who refuses to be turned away yet again. Sometimes it's a friend who won't laugh when cruelty passes for humor, or an employer who protects undocumented workers, or a church member who dares to ask why God supposedly calls men to preach but not women. Having a prophetic voice and proclaiming it begins in the gut, in that sacred unrest within that whisper that says, this cannot be right, not in my presence.
And the people of God said amen. That is not a plant. We did not have a conversation about that ahead of time. Somebody else can jump in, but that sums it up. So unless somebody has it, let me give you prophetic pacing. And so we have like our email dialogues, and I like to practice disagreeing with my elders,